Our state of mind
And
was
good evening again, everyone. I'm Trace Gallagher. It is midnight
resolved.
on the East Coast, 9 o'clock here in Los Angeles. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, speaking now. We continue our special coverage of election night. Let's listen live.
To fear and the anxiety of someone that believes in only one thing, shock and awe, to intimidate and exhaust us. But we're seeing all across this country, 7 million people strong, standing up, not just for themselves, but for each other and for these enduring and historic principles of our founding fathers. And I'll end on that. Next year is the 250th anniversary of the best of Roman Republic, the best of Greek democracy. This fundamental notion of a system of checks and balances, of popular sovereignty, the rule of law. Mr. President, the rule of law, not the rule of dawn. And I hope it's dawning on people. The sobriety of this moment, what's at stake. Tonight, as I said, is an extraordinary moment for our party, but again, it's an extraordinary moment affirming those principles. Our founding fathers did not live and die to see the kind of vandalism to this republic and our democracy that Donald Trump is trying to perpetuate. And so my call tonight, in the spirit of Whitman, who talked about the powerful play, goes on. We all must contribute a verse. And so we need the state of Virginia. We need the state of Maryland. We need our friends in New York, in Illinois, in Colorado. We need to see other states with the remarkable leaders that have been doing remarkable things meet this moment head on as well, to recognize what we're up against in 2026. And let me make this crystal clear. We can de facto end Donald Trump's presidency as we know it the minute Speaker Jeffries gets sworn in as Speaker of the House of Representatives. It is all on the line, a bright line in 2026. And so I want to thank everybody that stood up, not just for our democracy, but stood up for those that have feel bullied and intimidated, stood up for this notion of co-equal branches of government and a system of checks and balances. And I want to thank my wife, who reminds me every single day that this is about those that feel alone, those that feel isolated, those that feel an anxiety and a stress that they never could have imagined in their lives. This was about saying to them, we have your back, we see you, you matter, we care. And I'll just say this, I'm confident as we move forward into 2026 in this country, the best is yet to come. Thank you very much.
Well, there you have the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, coming off, of course, giving a victory speech because Proposition 50 did pass in California. It is a redistricting measure that will limit or potentially take away about 4 seats, congressional seats for the state of California, moving from 9 down to 5 seats. Steve Hilton, I mean, it seems to me it's kind of unbelievable. You had the president of the United States who was kind of double teamed by Zohran Mamdani on one side of the country, Gavin Newsom on the other. Gavin Newsom said it was a great night for the Democratic Party. He said it was a victory for the state of California and the United States. And then he got into Trump. It seems to me as if a lot of these people, the leaders of a city, the leaders of a state, not really talking about the benefit to the people of their state and city, but how they're going to go after Donald Trump continually, on and on it goes.
Well, it's all they've got, Trace, because the results of their policies, whether that's Democrat rule in New York right now, or Gavin Newsom's rule in California right now, or socialist rule anywhere it's ever been tried, along the lines that Mamdani wants to take it even further than anywhere it's been tried in the Western world, and that's why he's desperate. He listed all the states. He wants them to save him. Look at the other ridiculous things he said, talking about the rule of law. The rule of law, he's the one standing in the way of federal law enforcement, trying to uphold the rule of law. He's the one standing in the way of that. And honestly, when you see him talk, increasingly hysterical, these kind of histrionic performances, he talks about no kings. He's turned into the biggest drama queen we've ever seen on the national stage.
Yeah. What do you think of the speech?
Newsom started the speech by saying Donald Trump is trying to rig the 2026 election. And then he goes on to say how, Trump said that today's election was rigged. So, I mean, come on. Which one is it? Is he rigging or is he accusing Newsom of rigging? He's inconsistent. And anyone who listens to any length of Newsom's speeches sees that there is no consistency. He flip-flops repeatedly within his own speech. He gives word salads like he just did, gives empty quotes from people he doesn't even know, all to try to make a point that I don't think he even knows what it is. He's dug himself, like Steve said, into a very deep hole. He's committed now to running for president, and if he doesn't succeed, he knows that he's done. So it's going to be tough to be Gavin Newsom for the next couple of years.
I think my favorite part was when he said, "My wife tells me every night," and then he kind of forgot what his wife tells him every night and then went on this rambling thing about something that his wife told him every night. William, Proposition 50, it did pass, and those who don't know are just joining us. It is the redistricting thing in California. And the whole pitching of this was this is going to give California voters their own say. This is going to give them the strength. The truth is, this takes away the independence of California voters. It allows state legislators to redraw the districts of California.
Right. So actually in the next 3 elections, basically we're going to see that Democrats have an edge, if you will, to basically try to stop Trump and his agenda and win back the House, denying his reform agenda in the final 2 years of his administration. Now, this makes California obviously a much deeper state, a deeper blue state, rather. Democrats have 43 House seats right now. 5 more they are projected to win with this proposition. Gives Republicans just 4 out of 52 seats. That's 7% of the state. Trump won by 38%. So California is a very diverse state, except when it comes to politics, right? Supermajority in the legislature. The last Republican elected statewide, Schwarzenegger, in 2006. So why did this happen? Why did voters throw out the nonpartisan redistricting commission you mentioned that they approved twice and gave California its most competitive elections in decades? 3 reasons. They were outgunned and outspent about 2-1. Secondly, Republicans did not have a heavy hitter like a Governor Schwarzenegger, aggressively, daily out there pounding the table at rallies. And third, Democrats made this a referendum on President Trump in a state where he isn't very, very popular. And the kicker, the unforced error, a lack of unity on the part of the GOP. Trump told Republicans not to vote early or by mail, and then the state Republican Party did. So I was looking at some numbers just a minute ago. Some not surprising. San Francisco, 84% voted in favor of it. L.A., Alameda, Oakland, obviously Napa, Riverside even went for it. But Fresno, Kern County said no, and the rural counties up way north, who really stand the most to lose here because their representation is going to basically disappear, overwhelmed by the urban areas they've stretched into. They all voted overwhelmingly no, but frankly, there's not many people up there, so they're going to lose. But what did show us? Prop 50 is the platform, the springboard Gavin Newsom wanted. Yeah. And now, not that he wasn't a national figure, but clearly he's going to ride this horse for a while.
Yeah. And the concept in Williams talking about here, just so everybody knows, in California, there's a reason they call it gerrymandering, right? It's Jerry, the vice president at the time, and it's salamandering. So they said, oh, it looks like a salamander. They're going to go up. They're going to take what is now a district in Northern California that is a red district. All they do is come down to San Francisco, and they just grab a bunch of those people who are liberals in San Francisco. Now it's part of the district, and good luck trying to beat the rural areas up there. I want to bring back in all of the panelists if I can. We've got Houman Hamadi with us, Elizabeth Barkahana, William LaJeunesse, Katie Zachariah, Steve Hilton. We've also got Elizabeth Pipko. You've got Brianna Lyman, Lydia Moynihan, and Jack Posobiec. Thank you all for coming on. I want to get to the extended panel here and get your thoughts on this. Elizabeth Pipko, you heard the governor of California, and again, it was this rant against the president of the United States, like it always is. And if this isn't proof positive when he talks about the Democratic Party and he talks about the nation, if this isn't proof positive that Gavin Newsom is considering or at least planning to run for president in 2028, I don't know what is.
I don't even know any Democrats at this point that can't admit that Gavin Newsom is planning to run for president and has planned to do so for a very long time, right? Most of these folks that get into the position that he's in, for example, they all eventually want to run for president, and he's someone who's been groomed to run for president. This is not a surprise, and it's not a surprise either that he put forward this Prop 50 choice for the people of his state, knowing that he was basically going to campaign on the fact that he was going to take on Donald Trump. He was going to win this vote, which everyone knew was going to happen considering the demographics of California, and that he was going to use that to try laws that we voted for, the guardrails that we put in place so that this would never happen, so partisan redistricting would never happen in California. We're going to throw that aside because all we care about is taking on Donald Trump. We all could have predicted this was going to happen, and like you said, he put himself in a very bad position because Republicans actually have the advantage if we choose to take on this fight.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, Breonna Lyman. It's one of those things where it's now become so like, you know, expected. You know that Gavin Newsom's going to come up, he's going to make a speech, and his speech is always going to be a dig at Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with how he's going to help the people in the Palisades get their homes back, or how he's going to help, you know, the people get the taxes down, or anything like that. It's all about dig at Trump.
Yeah, to Jack's earlier point, Democrats really focus on grievance-based politics, but I want to jump back to the redistricting conversation because what's really concerning to me tonight isn't just California Prop 50. It is Virginia's House of Delegates. They are on track to have 64 seats, okay? They're picking up almost 10 seats. They are going to redistrict. Virginia will redistrict. You know who's not going to redistrict right now? Indiana, Kansas, Ohio, Republican states. I know we're all talking, oh, Republicans are going to win. Republicans could win if they did something, but right now they have no appetite to do anything. So you know what? Republicans will lose this redistricting. They will lose the House next year, and they will watch President Trump and all the momentum he had go right down the hill because they don't want to do their jobs. Yeah.
Lydia Moynihan, agree, disagree? What do you think?
I mean, Gavin Newsom embodies party over country, and it's pretty shocking to see somebody who's just totally focused on the national political picture, has totally thrown California by the wayside, and yet that doesn't seem to be the issue. I think the biggest issue for him, if he does want to pursue a presidential run, is the fact that he is a white man, and ultimately it doesn't matter if you're responsible for wildfires or people fleeing the state. Being a white man seems to be the biggest political liability in the Democratic Party today. But I do want to inject a little bit of hope here because there's obviously a lot that people are disappointed about tonight. At least in New York, there are some rays of hope. I would note, as we see the left continue to go further and further into a more socialist approach, we are also seeing sort of bright lights like an Elise Stefanik emerge, who will likely announce a bid for governor. I don't want to change the conversation too much, but I do want viewers to be aware there is still a lot of good stuff that's happening.
Yeah, listen, we're all about the big picture. I want to bring Jack Posobiec back in here. And Jack, you know, I keep going back to this because we talk about Gavin Newsom and how, you know, he has this tendency to tell, you know, these fabrications, and, you know, goes back to and the stuff that he won't stand by. And when, you know, you talk about biological males and female sports, and I remember the Charlie Kirk interview that he did with Gavin Newsom on the Newsom podcast, where Gavin Newsom said, yeah, it's absolutely not fair. And then he went back on that and did nothing about it. But this has become like a theme with the California governor.
Well, that's exactly right, Trace. And in fact, another thing that he went back on was that when he sat down with Charlie and they had a very amiable conversation, they disagreed certainly, but at least they could do so in a way where they weren't coming at each other. Where he mentioned that his son was a fan of Charlie Kirk, but then he walked that back as well and said, well, actually, my son is just familiar with Charlie Kirk. Look, he's doing this because, of course, he wants to run in a Democrat primary. And go look at the Democrats. They just elected Jay Jones down in Virginia. So when we're told that Republicans have to tone down the rhetoric, 1.3 million liberals just voted to elect Jay Jones, who walked up there, and what did he say? He said, I will kill Republican children. I want this to happen. And so this is the type of rhetoric that we're now seeing from elected Democrats, who's going to be the top cop of Virginia. Gavin Newsom walking it back as well. He realizes his party has embraced the crazy. They've embraced the crazy when it comes to Jay Jones. They've embraced the crazy when it comes to Zohran Mamdani, and it is only going to get worse.
Yeah, he makes a good point, and I'm going to get to Alexis McAdams in New York in a minute, but I want to bring Elizabeth Barkahana back into the conversation very quickly here, because he's right. It's a good point when they talk about Jay Jones winning. Jay Jones had these horrific text messages, right? Put bullets in people's. It's the thing that has suddenly become normalized. 2 years ago, when we heard from the river to the sea, we never thought we'd hear such thing. Now it's normalized. When they brought in the man who killed the health executive in the back of the head, they literally, women were proposing to him in jail. They were applauding him. It has become so normalized, all of this behavior, and this is part and parcel of a bigger problem.
Well, like I keep saying, the revolution is complete. Political violence is acceptable among the Democrat Party, and this election of Jay Jones is proof of that. And this election also comes on the heels of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Right. And in the days after that, you know, we saw so many people waking up in that moment to the Democrats' reaction to the assassination. That really turns people off. But then where were they in this turnout? And I do want to give Republicans in California a little bit of hope, because we, you know, kind of, the country writes us off. But really, there are 6 million Republicans in California, and the numbers are not final, but as of 8 o'clock, 4 million of them didn't show up to vote for this election. The number of Republicans who didn't vote in this election exceeds the number of Democrats who did. And so that is a statewide election where we don't always have the numbers, but here we did. And also in these smaller district races, in the congressional races, we lost a seat by under 200 votes. We lost another one by under 600 votes. And in each of those races, thousands of Republicans didn't turn out to vote. And so what we need here is a different mindset. First of all, that we can win. Mm-hmm. And second of all, that we need to adapt to this new way of voting that we don't all have to like, but we have to participate in, because we cannot keep losing elections. It's not patriotic to lose to communists.
Back to that, let's bring in the New York City mayor's race, where voters decided by a big margin to put a Democratic socialist in charge of America's biggest city. Alexis McAdams is live for us in New York with the very latest on this. Alexis, good early morning to you.
Hey, Trace. Yeah, so just a short time ago, as you saw, and you took it live there on Fox News, that Zohran Mamdani came out, and he really made, instead of a victory speech that maybe some were expecting, it was more one big challenge to President Donald Trump. He said, I know you're listening, so why don't you turn up the volume? Not only is New York City going to be full of immigrants, Zohran Mamdani said, but he said in January it will be led by one. But he really wanted to go one-on-one, toe-to-toe with the President of the United States. And voters I talked to that like Trump or not said, when I talked to them in the weeks leading up to this race, Trace, they were ready to kind of move in a new direction. They didn't want somebody in office that's only going to fight with Trump, because he can withhold more funding from the city. He loves New York. He's from here, but he is the President of the United States. But really, it was also a challenge to the Democrat establishment, from what Mamdani was saying on that stage here behind me, and there still is a pretty big crowd. He talked about how so long Democrats were for the working class and kind of felt like they moved away from that. So he says it's a new era, not really the Democrat Party like people say, not your father's Democratic Party. It's not. AOC was here. He's been on stage with Bernie Sanders, Letitia James, a lot of people that used to be kind of more, you know, I guess, more left, and now they're maybe going to be at the center of the Democratic Party. It depends on who you ask if Mamdani is the future of the Democratic Party, but from the energy in this room, we can tell you there's a lot more energy in here than there is for Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries when we talk to those people. So we're going to have to see what happens here. Some people want to move out, maybe not to California where you are, Trace, but they want to go to Florida. They want to go to Texas after this race, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will. Alexis McAdams live for us at the headquarters there in New York City. Alexis, thank you. Steve Hilton, I mean, it's a very good point that Alexis makes there, where you talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders is there. And there is this kind of tug-of-war in the Democratic Party now between the far left and the people who want to be moderate. And you had some of these candidates tonight who kind of ran as moderates. Maybe they go left, but you still have this tug-of-war, and the Democratic Party doesn't really have this identity because everybody has got their own agenda. They used to be kind of this big tent thing. Now it's like, well, AOC not really on the same page as John Fetterman, so on and so forth.
Yeah, but the left is clearly dominant. I mean, that's what you're seeing here. Exactly as Alexa said, that's where the energy is. By the way, it could be the case that Mamdani's so bad that people might even just move back to Gavin Newsom's California. That's how bad he really could be. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of other points. Elizabeth is exactly right. We are going to have that energy here in California next year. There are enough Republican voters in California to turn this state red. That's what's going to happen next year. What Human said earlier about the incoherence of what Gavin Newsom's talking about, amidst all the lectures about democracy, he was explicitly saying there that he did this whole thing, Prop 50, so that he could overturn the results of the 2024 presidential election. Donald Trump won the popular vote. What is Gavin Newsom trying to do? End the Trump presidency. That's what he said, this great champion of democracy. And I want to go back to what Jack said earlier about the really disgustingly divisive tone of Mamdani's speech tonight. I thought that was a really appalling speech. The hate that was there, the divisiveness, no attempt to try and bring this in. He didn't win some massive landslide. He barely got, right now it's almost exactly 50%. What did he do to try and reach out to the people he's now going to be representing? Absolutely nothing. It was angry, hateful, also full of cliches. I mean, like it was written by, I don't know, Marxist chat GPT or something. I mean, it was a terrible speech, no attempt to bring people together, and I just think he will regret that speech. And you're seeing this far-left faction within the Democratic Party take over. And again, to what Jack said earlier about Charlie, Newsom's following as well. He started the year trying to say, oh, I'm a moderate, I'm going to have Charlie on my podcast, Steve Bannon, and he's ending it by totally caving to the left, joining the Trump derangement faction and rigging elections, even though he claims to be defending democracy.
But is the goal, Katie, to bring Democrats together? I mean, if you're Zohran Mamdani and you're giving this speech, is your goal to bring New Yorkers together, to bring Democrats together? I don't know. I mean, there's a very good debate on that where he didn't say anything. I mean, he's been called anti-Semitic a bunch of times during this campaign. He could have eased that during his speech and didn't. In fact, he spoke in Arabic. He doubled down on a lot of the things that he's been criticized for in recent weeks, and yet here we are.
So the question is, does he want to bring the Democrats together?
Or New Yorkers together? Or
on the first part, Trace, I think he's splintering from what he believes is the typical Democrat Party, right? He is splintered off, and now it's the radical socialist and, in my opinion, communist party. And I look at Gavin Newsom and I watch Zohran, and there's a very clear distinction in their speeches. They are not leaders. Yes. They are fighting against President Trump. Tooth and nail, using millions and millions of dollars on the back of California taxpayers and soon to be on the back of New York taxpayers to fight President Trump, not to lead, not to inspire, not to solve problems. Yes, we're going to, be the welfare state and we're going to give you free housing and free this. We all know that's not going to work, Trace. We're going to get rid of the police department and send social service workers. No, he is not a leader, and you can only for so long be the quote fighter against President Trump. And look, 2026, and we'll go in the long game real quickly, 2026, President Trump is ostensibly on the ballot. Why is he on the ballot? All these Democrats, all these Republicans, President Trump's not on the ballot. That's why they didn't win. He will be on the ballot because they will do everything they can to impeach him in 26. So every single person needs to be motivated to go vote in 26 and ensure we protect the House so we don't get Zohrans and Newsoms across the country.
I'm wondering, Elizabeth Pipko, what you think about the statement that neither Zohran Mamdani or Gavin Newsom are leaders in their own right.
I mean, look, it depends what you're looking for, right? The Democrat Party is desperate for some kind of a leader, and I don't know where they're going to find that except for what they currently have going for them, and that happens to be Gavin Newsom, who's playing the American people about this, but the Democrat Party about this, and this is the leader that they are stuck with because of themselves.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama did not endorse Zohran Mamdani. I want to play this soundbite. This is Mamdani talking about being a Muslim. 33 seconds, it's worth it. Watch. Call for 21.
I'm Muslim. I am a democratic socialist. And most damning of all, I refuse to apologize for any of this.
And we talked about this, and you talked about this, Breonna Lyman, earlier. Seems to be proud about this. What do you think?
Well, he should definitely apologize for being a democratic socialist. That's not something to be proud of. And what you have to understand about Mamdani and people who believe what he believes in, they believe in principles that are fundamentally hostile to the American way of founding. Me too would be a massive red wave, and it turned out to be a little bit of a red drip. So who knows? Maybe today, it was a bad day for Republicans, but that doesn't necessarily mean 2026 is going to be the worst thing in the world.
We've got a minute and a half left. Lydia, do you have any more inspiring information for us?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about the mayoral race and migration, and the first point is just on inbound immigration here. We obviously had a flood of migrants that came into the city that drained a lot of the resources, but what's interesting is in the polling, among native-born American citizens, Cuomo actually would have won. So it's a very important reminder as we're thinking about what DHS is doing, the impact that illegal and legal immigration is having on our mayoral races here in New York and all across the country. And then the second piece is the outbound migration. Obviously, as many as 1 million New Yorkers are expected to essentially flee the city. And I think it's very important for people as they are leaving to think about what are the policies that they voted for here and what are the policies that they're going to be taking to wherever they go to next. So obviously, both inbound and outbound immigration having a big impact on the political landscape now and in the future here in the United States.
Ron DeSantis said on Hannity tonight when he became the governor of Florida, there were 300,000 more Democrats than Republicans in Florida, and now there are 1.3 million more Republicans than there are Democrats. That is a 1.6 million swing in a short period of time. It is election night, continuing coverage of breaking news right after the break. Continuing coverage of breaking news, the race for governor in New Jersey tightened considerably in the days leading up to Election Day, but in the end, the Democrats kept the top spot. Democrat Mikey Sherrill projected to defeat Republican Jack Ciattarelli. The national correspondent Brian Yennis is live at Ciattarelli election headquarters in Bridgewater, New Jersey. Brian, good evening. Or morning.
Trace, good evening. Good morning. Democrat Mikey Sherrill made history here in New Jersey, becoming the second female governor of New Jersey. She ran a campaign focused on defending New Jersey from President Trump's policies. She blamed the high cost of living in New Jersey, which voters said was their top concern, on President Trump. And tonight in her victory speech said governors have never mattered more than now.
Here in New Jersey, we know that this nation has not ever been, nor will it ever be, ruled by kings. We take oaths to a constitution, not a king. We've chosen liberty, the very foundation of democracy.
For Republican Jack Ciattarelli, it was a rough night. He lost by 3 points in 2021. He'll lose this election by double digits. 6 counties that voted for President Trump in 2024 flipped to blue. Tonight, Ciattarelli said, though, he vowed that he'll still fight for New Jersey.
Even though we were not successful tonight, it does not mean we were not successful in talking about the issues that matter. I'm more passionate than ever that these are the issues that need to be solved. Because if they're not, I fear for the future of New Jersey.
Trace, bottom line is, in New Jersey, there are 850,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. And for Ciattarelli to win, he needed Trump voters to show up as if President Trump was on the ballot. They did not. He needed to win independent voters. He did not. And even some of those Democrats needed to go his way. They came out in a big way against him and President Trump. Trace?
Brian Yennis live for us in New Jersey. Brian, thank you. Let's come back to our panel. I want to bring in Jack Posobiec if I can, because I know, Jack, you were passionate about the Ciattarelli campaign. What's your assessment? You haven't had long to really Monday morning quarterback this thing, Jack, but what do you think? What happened to the Ciattarelli campaign?
Well, Trace, I think it's really just a sign of what happens in elections when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. So Donald Trump is able to reach into those Democrat pockets and get Democrats to switch over. He's able to get independents to switch over. We saw that in the 2024 race. But New Jersey being a blue state, it reverts back to form when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. And this is going to be a test for Republicans moving now into a sort of a preview, if you will, of the midterm elections where, again, Donald Trump himself will not be on the ballot, but they've got to reach out to those low prop voters. And so that's why those of us, turning point action, we're going to be looking at infrastructure that we can build out on the ground, because this is all going to come down to turnout in these low turnout races. So we've got to do the hard work, the grubby work. The Democrats, by the way, the Soros organizations, they've been doing this for a generation. Charlie Kirk understood this, and that's why he moved Turning Point into low prop voting all the way back in 2022, which led to the massive wins in 2024. We got to build on that.
You know, Lydia Moynihan, to you, I think everybody was kind of surprised that Brian Yennis was talking about the fact that, you know, the last time around you had Jack Ciattarelli lost by 3 points, this time double digits. I mean, I don't think anybody really expected that. I certainly didn't. What about you?
Yeah, it was a huge disappointment. And it's funny hearing Jack speak about the Soros Foundation. Zohran Mamdani actually has a great photo that Alex Soros, the heir to the George Soros fortune, just posted. So for everything that Zohran Mamdani said about hating billionaires, it turns out when it comes to the Soros family, he's okay with that. But look, it was obviously a very disappointing night for Republicans, and in almost every county you saw it get farther blue than it was last year. Another very interesting trend that's important to pay attention to is the fact that women voters overwhelmingly turned out for Zohran Mamdani, Cheryl, for Ciattarelli. In some cases, about 80% of women voted for the Democrats. So I think there is a lot to digest here, and a lot to be aware of as Republicans head into the midterm. And it really does come back to it. I hate to use the word affordability that Zohran has used, but it comes back to those pocketbook issues. And of course, that's what Donald Trump has been so effective campaigning on. And so it's going to be a question of how else can Republicans embrace that messaging.
Yeah, but Brianna, the question is, how do you produce that messaging? I mean, there's just, unless you raise all the taxes dramatically, how do you produce, how do you actually make good on these promises of universal child care and groceries and you name it, you got it?
Yeah, that's the thing, Trace. You don't actually make good on those things because they've never worked before. And of course, you'll hear people say, well, true socialism has never been tried before. And if Mamdani fails, which I expect he will, they will give you that line. And I think with Mamdani's race in particular, we've been talking tonight about the old Democrat guard versus the new. Look, AOC has been thinking about possibly primarying Chuck Schumer for his seat. I think that if Mamdani crashes and burns New York City, AOC will have a much more difficult time justifying that run to donors.
Quick, I want to get your thoughts on what's happening. Ciattarelli as well as Mamdani.
You know, I actually spent 25% of my time in Bridgewater, New Jersey for several years until recently. And what would I hear New Jersey residents complain about? Taxes, taxes, taxes. Yeah. Their property taxes go up every single year, not like California. And they're outrageously high. Their income taxes are outrageously high. And what do they get in return for it? You have their cities like Newark that are crime-ridden hell right now that make, give Oakland a run for its money. And so I don't understand why New Jersey residents went in that direction.
They must like it.
It's the same reason they vote for Gavin Newsom, right? After he destroys the state, they want more. And I think at some point that's going to stop. It's going to take something really big. Not something small. And, New York, speaking of Mamdani, they're going to get something big. Once they have a flight of these billionaires who were actually paying the bills, who were supporting the government, who are already paying a disproportionate amount of their very high income in taxes, guess what's going to happen? You're going to lose 1% of the people, and you're going to have 99% of the people to take care of with less than half the money you used to. How are you going to do that? It's going to become a failed city, just like so many others, and we're going to have to bail them out.
Yeah. A lot of the country, people argue, just kind of sleep right through these types of things. And so that's where we end up. We are going to continue our coverage. Breaking news, election night. We'll be right back with the final round for the panel. Let's go inside election numbers with a closer look at Fox News voter poll. The senior national correspondent Kevin Corke is live at the big board in D.C. Kevin, good evening.
Great to see you, my friend. I want to take a look at the big board one final time tonight, beginning in the Garden State of New Jersey. Now, you and I talked about this yesterday and throughout the week. I kind of felt like this might be a lot closer race, to be honest with you. But as you see, Mikey Sherrill really pulling away ultimately 56-43. And I mentioned this, Trace, to you previously as well. I want to share this. This is sort of a broader look at what's been happening. If you think about over the last national election cycles, Iowa used to be purple. Ohio used to be purple. Now you're talking about reliably red. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all going red either 2 of the last 3 national cycles or all 3 of the national cycles. I thought that might actually happen in New Jersey. Not so much. Meantime, over in the Commonwealth of Virginia, again, Abigail Spanberger, 57-43. A lot of people really felt like it wouldn't be that close. We know down the stretch, Winsome Earl Sears really seemed to be gaining some ground. It didn't really pan out that way, and ultimately, she loses that particular race. Let's go ahead and take a look at the mayoral race. I thought this was really interesting, too. We talked about Zohran Mamdani. Not a big surprise, obviously, 50-41. But I do want to mention one thing, Trace, that I thought was instructive. Take you to Brooklyn. Yes, it's the most populous of the boroughs. But you know what was really interesting here? Look at the margin in Brooklyn, 56-37. Even if you throw Sliwa in there, this was not going to be close by any stretch of the imagination. Now, you talked about some questions. We had plenty for our voters out there. Let me just share this one. What best describes your opinion of the leaked J. Jones text? 45% said disqualifying. 1 in 10 of those voters still voted for him. He ends up becoming the Attorney General that kind of night, a blue wave, if you want to call it that. Trace.
Yeah. Kevin Corke live for us in D.C. Kevin, thank you. Let's get some final thoughts from our panel. We have a few minutes left. Steve Hilton.
So, Trace, I want to look ahead to a year from now. I won't be joining you around the table, I'm sad to say, because I'll be out there making my victory speech when I'm elected governor. How am I going to do it? How are we going to do it? It's exactly what all of us have said. Turnout, getting the Republican vote out. And the way we do it is exactly the way Jack talked about. That's what Charlie was building. Charlie was one of the first people I spoke to when I decided to run for governor. He's built a formidable machine there, chased the vote in Arizona and Pennsylvania for the president. That's why in the presidential election, the president won all the swing states. We know how to do this. And I want to bring in what Katie said about voter ID. That, when we get it on the ballot for next year, that's going to help get the vote out in California next year.
Trace, I think it's simple. I think Senator Thune needs to absolutely terminate the filibuster, and we need voter reform. We have to fight fire with fire. We have to fight back. We cannot win elections without voter ID and voter integrity, and that's what needs to happen here.
Elizabeth.
I think that the shutdown also had an impact, and it reminded me of here in Los Angeles County in 2020 when Dr. Ferrer said that she was going to keep the schools closed until after the election, because their mindset is if we can cause enough pain to the voters, it will galvanize them to turn out in the upcoming election. And I think that had a lot to do with why they kept the government shut down now.
Tonight, Gavin Newsom tried to change his image from one as a failed governor who burned down his state, taxed them to death, and caused the cost of living to skyrocket on his watch because of his policies, into someone who is now a Trump fighter and a national hero. We have to make sure that not just until 2026, when there's a gubernatorial race, and we have a great candidate right here, but 2028, when he's going to be a presidential candidate, that the country does not forget the person he is and not to allow him to erase his past, but rather to remember it every single day.
Breanna Lyman.
3 big takeaways. 1, I hope Republicans learn how to win when Donald Trump isn't on the ballot. 2, I hope that Republicans in Kansas, and Indiana, Ohio take seriously redistricting after Prop 50 passed. And last but not least, I hope the old guard of the GOP realizes that what happened in New York City tonight is in large part because they supported mass legal migration.
Lydia Moynihan.
It's a wild night to think that somebody like Mamdani, who has refused to condemn, globalize the Intifada, celebrates the Holy Land Five, basically frontman for Hamas, has been elected in New York City, the largest population center for Jews outside Israel. But I think, if anything, this is going to galvanize the GOP. I think we're going to see Elise Stefanik mount what will likely be a very successful run for governor next year. And I think this will spur the motivation to continue deportations.
Elizabeth Pipko.
Yeah, look, every election, Trace, is an opportunity to learn, and I hope both parties learn from what happened tonight. Obviously, on the Republican side, we need to learn how to get our voters out, realize what it means when Donald Trump's name is not literally on that ballot, and look at what Republican voters need to actually get out of their homes and vote, especially in those off-election years. And for Democrats, they have a hard choice to make. But do they want to keep people like Mamdani at the front of their party? Do they want to stand for socialism, or do they want to stand for America? And we're going to get answers for both parties in about a year.
Jack.
Well, Trace, look, we need to continue investing in infrastructure. Obviously, tonight was a big wake-up call for that. Turning point action is there. We're learning more from this. Number two, when you look at Mamdani in New York City, this model is going to continue. You're going to have the gimme grants that Democrats, of course, are pushing into this country, and they're going to look to have be electing those, and then they want more and more of this political violence with Jay Jones.
Thank you for watching this expanded election night edition of America's Late News, Fox News at Night. I'm Trace Gallagher in Los Angeles. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.